Hey everyone, welcome to Men Talk. I'm your host, Chris Cook, and today's guest is Dr. Jourdan Johnson, a psychotherapist and mental health performance consultant. He'll be sharing his journey and insights into athletes and everyday people with mental health and performance. If you're seeking inspiration and practical advice, this episode is for you. Dr. Jourdan Johnson. Jourdan Johnson is a psychotherapist and mental health performance consultant. He earned his bachelor's and master's at San Francisco University. He earned his doctorate at the University of Western States of Education, Sport, and Performance Psychology. He is the owner of Sidelines Sports Psychology. He is a clinical mental health counselor at St. Mark's Hospital and a father of one beautiful girl. Is that good? Let's talk about how you got into your profession. What made you get into it?
Yeah, there were like two kind of like defining moments that kind of got me into it. They came about separately. One of them was through my time playing in sports. One of the big things I always talk about with a lot of my athletes is that all my brothers, they played college basketball. I did not. I always felt like I was just as good as them, but I was the oldest, had to learn some things by myself. And I think when I look back, I wasn't mentally tough enough to deal with the day-to-day of what it means to be an athlete. So I ended up quitting basketball way sooner than I should have. And I look back, there were so many things I was going through in life, in sport, and basketball, so I just couldn't handle it. And then when I was I used to scout for the New Orleans Pelicans. And I remember I went on a scouting trip, and my brother, he redshirted his freshman year at Northwestern, and he was just having a really tough time. And we were just talking about all the stress that he was going through. And at the time, I was a scout, but I was also taking psychology courses at the City College of San Francisco just as a throwaway course, and ended up falling in love with it because I saw a need. The more and more that I talked to athletes, I saw a need for them to be able to address things and figure out the things that they're going through. Because I always say that for athletes, everyone talks about the athletes that make millions of dollars and all these different things and how easy their life is. That's just not the case. In some ways, more money, more problems.
Right.
You work with NBA athletes, you work with college athletes. And if you look at like the schedule for a student athlete, especially in college, it might be one of the hardest schedules that anyone will ever have to do in their life. Because a lot of times you practice in the morning, then you go to school, might practice in the afternoon or have conditioning in the afternoon. Then you have to study, and you have very little time to yourself. And at the time when I was going into it, there was no NIL or anything like that. So you also were broke most of the time too.
Yeah. For those broke college students, I get that. So let's take a step back. So you said you were struggling. You're just going through things, and you're the oldest of your family playing sports. Now, what were some of the things that like you were struggling with then?
So if I look back to like when I was like playing in high school, some of the things that I was struggling with was I did move around a lot. I probably had to move schools a few different times just because of my family and their work. That was just a mental health challenge that I had to deal with. My father, he played in the NBA. Okay. So when your father plays in the NBA, there's a higher level of expectation of like how you need to perform and how you need to work through no fault of his. Right. But I don't know if he knew how to communicate effectively to get me to play the best that I could.
Okay. So that kind of brings full circle of what you're doing now. So you went through it with your dad. I'm sure he's a great person.
Yeah.
And then you just know what you probably needed, and then now you're doing it for others. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, and I could say back then I had no idea what I needed.
Yeah.
I just knew that something felt off, and I just wasn't performing well. I just felt nervous. I felt anxious, and it was a sport that I loved. My first email was Hoop Dream J5.
Yeah.
At AOL.com.
Right. So what was it growing up with, and your dad was in the NBA, what was that like growing up with?
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was, so he mostly played overseas, so I definitely don't remember him playing in the NBA at all, but I remember him playing overseas. I remember him getting injured, him having his own stress. We never really talked about it. I got to witness what it meant to be a part of basketball, the life of basketball, and fell in love with it. Even though it's tough moving from city to city, I wouldn't trade that for anything because you get to learn about how a lot of different people live. I got to live in Texas. I got to live in Alabama. I'm from California. And each one of those experiences came with a new perspective. So I love that. I love that part of sport, working in sports. I love that part of working in basketball.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell us a bit about when you were doing your recruiting or stuff with the New Orleans Pelicans.
Yeah. When I was with the Pelicans, I didn't necessarily do much recruiting, but it was a lot of doing scouting reports, watching these players. So I was doing that from 2013, 2015, around that time. So had the pleasure of scouting the pack before it kind of dissolved, the NWAC. So it was just great. It was just a lot of watching basketball, giving my analysis on if I think this player is going to be a good fit for the team.
What makes a player a good fit versus not a good fit? Like what goes into all that?
So it's tough to say because at the end of the day, it really is a little bit of like guesswork. But some of the things I would look for is the first thing I'd probably look for is this person athletic enough to play at the NBA level. So that was like the number one thing I would look for. If they weren't athletic enough, did they have the skill set for their game to translate?
Gotcha.
When I think about a player that I scouted that is incredibly just not athletic, it was Kyle Anderson. And his nickname is Slow-Mo. But I remember watching him at UCLA, and I was just like, okay, he's long. He's a great passer. He's a very smart, high IQ player. And that player has been in the league for 10 plus years now.
Yeah, he's doing pretty good for himself.
Yeah, and now he's on a number one seeded team providing effective minutes. Yeah. But in that same scouting trip, I had also seen Zach LaVine, who I felt was a relatively unknown freshman until that tournament I watched him at. And I remember watching him, and I was like, oh, my God, this person can jump out the gym. He's super athletic. I was like, that's not even who I was here to come see. He was on my notes of people to go see, but he wasn't the person where I was like, yeah, this is who I'm coming to see. I think at the time on UCLA, it was Jordan Adams, Kyle Anderson were like the older guys, and Zach LaVine was a freshman. But
that's cool.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I look at: athleticism, how well their game translate. Even back then, it was like, can this person shoot the ball from the NBA 3? Can they defend? And that's the big one, because there's a lot of guys who don't
play defense. Maybe?
There's just a lot of guys who can score at the NBA level, but you have to be able to defend.
Right.
And if you can't, defend, you really have to be a very elite scorer.
Yeah.
Like you look at like Isaiah Thomas, who his prime was putting up 30 points a game. And it didn't matter if he really couldn't play defense because he was scoring so much.
Yeah.
Now, maybe if given the right opportunity, he would average, let's just say 15 a game max right now. That's not good enough when you can't play defense.
No. And his size probably hurts him, I would assume.
Yeah.
So another follow-up question to that is, what about the character issues? Is that a thing?
So,
NBA too, like scouting as well?
Yeah, I think more teams are focusing on bringing mental performance and mental health into scouting. Yeah, it's a big thing because you'll run into players who are great talents, but they're not great fits for the team. I can't remember the player's name. I think he played for the Rockets, but there was literally a player who retired because he couldn't go on planes. And that's like the number one. That's like the number one way that NBA teams travel. It's the only way that they travel. So
really,
so he had an immense fear of planes, and he was out the league.
But had the talent and everything to
never really even got to see it because it was debilitating. That's an extreme example, but you have a lot of players who might be having trouble with their baby's mother. You might have life issues affect you on the court, and on-court issues affect you off the court.
Yeah.
So knowing some of that stuff beforehand, I think is very crucial for the scouting process.
Yeah. So let's break down. So you were with the New Orleans Pelicans, and then what working with the athletes there, doing the scouting reports. Let's talk about like just the athletes in general, because you were then, where'd you end up after that?
Back in school.
Oh, back in school. Okay,
Yeah.
Got it. And then after you got your doctorate and all that, where'd you land?
Most recently, I was working with Real Salt Lake.
Okay, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Because Greg mentioned this.
Yeah.
And I knew too, but there's a lot to uncover here.
Yeah.
I just want to like break it down. Just break it down for us. I would assume that some of the same things with the NBA, but like just break it down, what that was like, things that these players were going through.
Yeah.
And just like issues that they have that just us normal people have that aren't professionals in a sport like that.
Yeah. So I moved out here about 2 years ago,
Okay.
maybe 2.5 years ago, to come work with Real. I started off working with their academy, but then quickly moved up to working with their second pro team and then their first pro team. So the challenges that they faced were different at every level.
Okay.
And I'll just break it down into the core struggle.
Yeah.
Like at the academy level, you have a bunch of kids who are 13 to 17 years old.
Yes.
Some of them are on academy contracts. Some of them are on pro contracts.
Can you explain that?
So if some of the academy kids, they'll be on like a pro contract. So it's like a developmental contract. It's, hey, we see you as one of our future Monarchs players or first team players. Mm-hmm. So when you see those players, they have an expectation to keep performing. So they get a little bit of stress from that. But the players that are just on academy contracts, they're not getting paid. They're not getting anything. So there's an immense pressure. It's like when you see like those academy kids, a lot of them have a mindset as if I don't make it, or if I get cut by this academy, my soccer dreams could be over.
Yeah.
So just at the academy level, even you haven't made it to the first team level yet. So there's so much work to be done. And when you're 13, 14, 15, 16, it's hard to look at the big picture, right? A coach might not, play for 10 minutes and you think the world's over. You might not start, but you come off the bench and you find your value in starting. That was a big one that I had, was like players were like, I'm not starting. I was like, okay, but you get to finish out the game. You get to close out the game.
Yeah. So it's look like you're not starting now, but look like this is also an opportunity. You're closing out this game. Like you got to perform
Yes.
at your best. And that's crazy to think about, because you said these kids are 13 years old.
Yeah.
That's an immense amount of pressure for these kids to have.
Yeah.
What's like a one-on-one conversation like with them?
Yeah. In terms of doing like mental performance work, mental health work, I can say that working in that age group, they're by far the most receptive and most open with their feelings. Some of them are guarded, but they're still learning. Brain keeps developing until you're 25, 26.
Right.
So they're still developing, their own worldview and how they interact in the world of sports, or even just how they interact with themselves and the outside world. So a lot of times those conversations go a little bit smoother, at least at the beginning.
Yeah.
The beginning stages of like therapy and mental performance work is always the hardest, because that's when people are the most skeptical.
Gotcha.
Because they're like, I don't know you, you don't know me. What do we have to talk about?
Yeah. So what's the trust? Because you're talking about trust.
Yeah.
So what's like building that trust with them? What's a good experience and what's like a bad experience you've had?
So I would say I'm lucky to not have had that many bad experiences, at least in early stages.
Yeah.
For me, one of my, I think, best skills as a therapist, as a mental performance work, is my ability to connect. And I kind of attribute that to being a big kid. So some of the things I like to do, I watch anime. I do listen to the young rappers because I do like them. I like a lot of the same shows. I like doing a lot of the same things.
Not to stop you. So I forgot what I was listening to. It could have been like, Charlemagne the God is, right?
Yeah.
He had someone on there and he said that if you really want to know where the younger generation is at, listen to the music and watch the things that they watch.
Yeah.
Is that kind of true, or how do you feel about it?
I would say, yeah. I think anytime you have a similar interest, you're going to make a connection with someone.
Yeah.
And for me, it's genuine.
Right.
Yeah, if you listen to the music, you'll get some type of insight, but I truly like the music. I truly go out and seek I go seek the music. I go seek a lot of these things. Yeah, there's differences. I'm 33 years old, so we have some differences. But at the core, a lot of the stuff is the same, right? I remember one time I brought my DJ mixing board, and we were mixing up songs together. I don't know many therapists that are coming and bringing their mixing board for a mental health group. So I would say that's like my specialty, is getting to know people. I would say even in the way that I do my work at early stages, it's probably a little non-traditional from even what I was taught in my master's program, in my doctor's program.
Is there a wrong way to do? You can't obviously do things that are legal, but like, to relate to all those things, is there a wrong way that they're like, no, you should do it this way. This is how it should be done, or?
One of the big things I used to always get in my arguments with my teachers about, was self-disclosure for therapists.
Okay.
And I will say it's a fine line, but a lot of therapists just go the route of not disclosing anything about themselves. So
yeah, that's crazy, because that makes sense. Because it's like, I can see how therapists would just have that wall of, I'm only here doing business.
Yeah.
And you're giving me your issues, and then I'm helping you, and then you're on your way.
Yeah. So like the concept of why therapists do that is that they don't want to make the therapy about themselves. So I get why it came about. I get why they taught that for so long, but I've always been one to push back against that specifically, because as long as you're able to disclose in a way that's helpful for the client, I think you should do it more often than not.
Yeah.
One of the things I do at the beginning of pretty much any new client session is we will play a game of 20 questions. I normally shorten it to 5, where they can ask me a question. It's not about therapy. It's just about me. So we can figure out what we like and what we don't like. One of my clients, they asked me what kind of car I drive, or do I like cars, or what's my dream car? Yeah. And we just happened to have the same. Happened to have the same dream car. From then, they were all on board. And just 5 minutes earlier, they told me I shouldn't be here. I'm just coming here because my parent wants me to. Being able to even flip a relationship that quick, that's really special. That's the core of my work, and that's what I love about it, and that's why I feel like even sets me apart from a lot of other therapists.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. Yeah. And then, we talked a little bit about the academy, and then moving up, you then worked with
the Monarchs. So that's the second team.
Okay. Is it the same ages, or?
So some of the academy kids, the ones I told you were on the pro contracts, they'll go up and down, and they'll play academy Monarchs.
Oh, okay. Just
so that's
NBA
tough.
G League. Type thing. Okay.
Yeah. So that's tough. Just switching teams from week to week, because that can happen at the.
Do they take that as a demotion in a way?
A lot of times, no.
Okay, or do they not understand that like it would be professional?
No, it's more like an expectation. It's They know that they're on the Monarchs, but they need to go and play the academy games to go help the academy win games too. Because they're like, so they're like it's just the more you can play, the better you're gonna get. The more experience you get, the better you're gonna be. Yeah. So I would say, they don't see it as like a demotion or anything along those lines. Mm-hmm. It's really just an opportunity to grow. That being said, the stress for being at the Monarchs is now I'm so close to the first team. Yeah. I'm very close to the first team, and I want to make it.
Can you see, because I would assume like you can see where kids are like going, and I'm assuming, could you like project where like this kid right here, like he's gonna make it like pretty quickly? Can you see that, or?
So I'm a basketball person. So in terms of understanding like skill set, that's not the area that I'm in. If I was working in basketball, I'd be able to do that a lot easier. I remember having conversations with the GM, assistant GM. From a mindset perspective, this is a player who is primed to at least be great from a mindset perspective. And if you can develop them physically and technically, you might have a great player on your hands.
Gotcha.
I've made that recommendation before.
Okay. And so you talked about the academy, the Monarchs, and then the first team.
Yeah. First team. Once you get to the first team, it's a business. When you're at the highest level of your sport, you're now in a business, NBA, NFL, MLB, MLS, any professional sport league. Once you get to the top of that sport, it's a business. Everything is judged on performance at that level.
Right.
So a lot of times when I'm working with the first team, it becomes more about mental performance rather than mental health.
Gotcha.
And a lot of the
You break the mental performance and then the mental health down. Like what?
Yeah.
Find the difference of both.
Yeah. So like when you do therapy work, you're trying to help a player through psychosocial problems, depression, anxiety.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when you help them with depression, anxiety, a lot of times they'll get better. With mental performance work, you're really trying to make sure they perform better. And it's almost like the inverse. When you help someone with their mental performance on the field, they feel a lot better on the field. So a lot of times that bleeds over into their day-to-day life. So it's really the starting point and what's the core issue you're trying to tackle. So for therapy, this player comes in, hey, I've been really depressed. This has been the issues that I'm dealing with. How can you help? Where mental performance is like, hey, I keep missing shots in front of the goal, and I'm not sure why.
There's so much more to that too, isn't there?
Yeah, you can take it from like a mental health perspective.
Yeah.
But when it's at that level, a lot of times you just work on the performance. You're not going really deep into the underlying stuff. It's just a very solution focused like way to work with the problem. Okay, I'm missing this shot. Okay, how often do you practice that shot?
Yeah.
It's very straightforward in the way that mental performance work is done compared to how mental health work is done. Because in mental health work, the person might not be ready to talk about it, but you might want to try to get the information out of them. A lot of times, mental performance work, hey, what's the problem? This is the problem.
Gotcha. So taking a further step back about basketball, not to get away from the soccer topic, but there is, I think it's Markelle Fultz and Ben Simmons, where they've been struggling shooting.
Yeah.
Why?
So for Markelle Fultz, I have no idea. I don't have any type of...
Or what would you say it could be?
If I'm thinking about it, I've heard reports of like nerve damage and stuff like that. Okay. So it might be a physical issue.
Oh, so that's different than...
Because if you look at him from college to the NBA, his shot form changed.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people say it's the yips or something like that, but his shot form changed. So I don't know if he was just dealing with an injury or limited range of motion or anything along those lines. In terms of Ben Simmons, I don't think he's ever been considered a good shooter. I don't know facilitated from him not shooting any jumpers at all, because in college and high school you would at least see him shoot the mid-range.
Right.
I don't
layups and dunks.
Yeah, I don't know.
So is that not a psychological thing, or
it could be? It could be a confidence issue.
Okay.
Right. When he was in high school and college, the athletes aren't as good. They don't contest as well. He just might not be comfortable shooting those shots.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is a mental performance issue. If I had to guess, he's just not comfortable. And the thing about shooting is it's all about confidence.
Right.
Like when you shoot the ball and you know you're going to make it, or you think you're going to make it, you're going to have a better outcome than if you don't think you're going to make it.
Yeah.
And I've seen that time and time again, where I've seen players who could make 20, 30, 40 threes in a row in practice, and then when the game time comes, wide open, catch and shoot, they're not hitting it, because in that moment when they catch the ball, you don't want to think. You just want to do. You just want your body to go up and shoot. You're like, I'm going to make this. Curry doesn't think about every single shot. It's just automatic. It's just he's done it so many times where he just knows it's probably going to go in. Yeah. Whereas I had this one basketball player that I was working with last year, and he was a good shooter. He was definitely a good shooter, but he was streaky. And when he would miss a shot, if he didn't make his first shot, things would go off the rails. He would start having all these thoughts. He's like, I'm not shooting well. I'm having all this. He's like, I can't do it. My coach is looking at me. All these thoughts go into your head. So like relating it back to Ben Simmons, I imagine it's a confidence issue or a preparation issue.
Okay, gotcha. So athletes in general, like what, because we just talked about the confidence, what have you done to help boost confidence or just get these players to believe in themselves?
Yeah. So I would say the way that work sometimes can be like a little confrontational, not in a aggressive way, but if
It's
a player,
it's a business way.
yeah. So if a player tells me he's a bad shooter, I might say immediately back, what evidence do you have to support that? And then they'll sit there and they'll be like, I missed this shot. I was like, is that evidence to support that you're a bad shooter? I was like, going back to Steph Curry, what does he shoot from three? 40%? So the greatest shooter of all time misses over half his shots, right? Missed shots happen.
Yeah, are you familiar? I think it's Up in Smoke, or it's with Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson.
Yeah.
And they're basically saying you're never going to make all of your shots.
Yeah.
And you're never going to make all of your shots, and it's going to be rare that you're going to miss every single one of them in a game.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's completely normal.
Yeah. That's awesome, dude. And then let's talk about, saw your post on Instagram about emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how does emotional intelligence tie in with the athletes?
No. So for emotional intelligence for athletes, to me, has always been about awareness, right? If a player can't answer these three questions, I wonder about their emotional intelligence. What are you working for? What puts you in a good situation to get what you want, and what derails it, right? If a player is not able to answer those questions, some of my eyebrows get raised a little bit, because I wonder how much they think about the mental side of their game. Awareness is just like important. Like, I've had players who are like, I'm better than the guy in front of me. I'm better than the guy in front of me. I don't know why I'm not playing. You need to figure that out.
Yeah.
Right? You need to figure that out, because it's causing all this emotional distress for you. When you miss a shot and you don't know why, you start stressing out and you have this like anxiety response. Sometimes it's harder to control, but if you have no idea why it's happening, you're in an emotionally unintelligent spot as an athlete.
Yeah.
And it's not going to help you out in the long run.
So what are conversations like that with some of them?
It's really just me asking them about their level of awareness. And I'll ask them questions. I was like, can we come up? And you never want to destroy a player's confidence, but I was like, what are some of the reasons why you think this person is playing over you? That's a big question I asked. It's like, okay, you think you're better than this person?
Is that, what are they doing right and that you're not doing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Or being a player, it's also about being in the right coaching situation, right? You look at, I think about Jeremy Lin, right? He was not he was journeyman, almost out the league, and then Linsanity happens because he had a coach and a bunch of opportunities with injuries that led him to being able to play the way he wanted. And he knew he was, if you actually listen to him talk about it, one of the things he talks about, he's like, it was when I went in, it was my last chance. So he was like, I'm going to make the best of it. And
are you referring to the Knicks?
Yeah.
Situation?
Yeah. When he was with the Knicks, he was like, this is my last chance to like make it.
Prove myself.
And he was like, this is it. And he didn't have to think about all the other stuff. He was just aware of what he needed to do. The confidence went high, and he didn't have any more worries because he had nothing to lose at that point.
Yeah, that is crazy. Tying back in the RSL, what was it like? Because you worked with the actual professional soccer players, right? What was like a day to day?
So I actually lived at the training facility.
Okay.
So if I went and started my day, it would be, I would wake up at work, go drive an hour back and forth, or 30 minutes back and forth to drop off my daughter at school. I would catch the end of the academy practice a lot of times, and then I would go with the first team. They practice at noon most days. They're in the building around like 9 or 10. Okay. Around 1 o'clock, when everyone's gone, I would start going back with the academy because they do 2 practices a day. And then I would go back to the dorm because I lived with the academy. I lived with the academy kids. And then I would do my my sessions from like 4 to 10. So
Gotcha.
my day was, a lot of days was from 9 to 9.
You're involved in the BAL, the
Mm-hmm.
Basketball African League.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I'm actually going to be heading to Egypt in a couple weeks.
Sick.
This is my third year going out there, second year doing mental performance work with them. So essentially last year I worked with every team and helped create a mental performance workshop and program for the BAL, Basketball Africa League,
Okay.
NBA Africa. So that's what I've been doing for the past couple of years. I've been doing the work with players from across the continent of Africa. Last year went to Senegal and Egypt.
Okay.
This year just going to Egypt and might head to Rwanda for the championship.
Sick.
They expanded the program this year, so I didn't have to go to each individual market. They added South Africa this year, so they found someone in South Africa to do it. I do the Egyptian portion, and someone else will do this portion in Senegal at the end of the month. But my workout there is pretty interesting because
Is it different than most of everything you've been doing so far? Or?
It's different in the sense that it's a whole different continent, different countries, and countries that have not historically had any type of like mental health and mental performance exposure. So when working out there, it's almost like working from ground up for some of these players. I was like, hey, has anyone heard of mental health? And they're like,
what is this?
What is that? So when I did my presentations and my speeches last year, it was a lot of explaining, some of the stuff that we talked about here, how I got into it, why it's important, and how to implement it into your day-to-day basketball activities.
Right.
I think it was pretty well received because they brought me back this year, and then they expanded the program.
Is this something you applied for, or did someone seek you out? Because from my understanding is that you're pretty big in what you do and in the industry. You've been really big at RSL. So I'm just wondering, is that something that...
Yeah. So the way that the BAL opportunity came up was, one, I used to work for the NBA Summer League. So I used to, help do that event, for seven something years. And I made a connection with one of the people who also worked there, who worked at the BAL. He put me in contact with the right people because he knew I was interested in using my skill set at the BAL. They liked the idea and they brought me on. The first year I went to the BAL, I went out there to network. I only knew him, and I didn't have it was a whole crazy story.
I have a host when you
I didn't have I had to cancel my hotel when I landed because it was like in this area where I was like super uncomfortable.
Okay.
So it wasn't a part of the NBA at all, but he got me tickets and I was able to go out and meet people.
Yeah.
But I took a chance. Like I wasn't working at the time and I bought a ticket to Senegal and I was like, I'm showing up. I'm going to talk to people and I'll be working it next year. That's what I envisioned, and that's what happened the next year.
You were just confident and just foreseeing what you wanted to do.
I don't even think I thought about that until like right now, but when I went there that first year and I didn't realize like the risk I was taking, I was like, I'm just going to go.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm just going to go because I was like, I want to be a part of the Basketball Africa League as a black man in America who had never been to Africa.
Yeah.
There's a whole history of black people not going to Africa, and we know why that happens. And I was like, I need to go to Africa, and using my skill set in mental health, mental performance, and basketball, it seemed like it was the perfect fit. When I saw the BAL was announced, I knew I had to be a part of it.
Yeah.
No matter what.
Yeah.
My goal is still to work at the NBA.
Right.
And do mental performance full time with an NBA team. But when I saw that opportunity, I was like, I can do something that I've never thought I was going to be able to do, which is go to Africa.
Yeah.
And
that's awesome.
And speak in front of hundreds of people.
And the first question that came to mind when you were working in the BAL, them not knowing much about mental health, one, do you think they're going to be receptive to things that you're going to be doing? The other one, is there a different set of issues being in Africa, right? That's not America, where we have basically everything we need and don't need. Do you think there's going to be like a different set of challenges that people are experiencing here? It's like the mindset, culture is probably a big one of them too.
There's definitely a difference, right? If you go talk to the team from Egypt, they have pretty nice facilities. But when you talk to the team from Mali, this is a professional level team that won their championship to qualify for the BAL. They practice on dirt sometimes they don't have access to a gym and they practice on dirt.
Really?
Right? They have families who need money. I don't want to make it too extreme, but for some, it can be life and death, because if I am not able to make this money for my family, you know.
You're not going to be fed.
Yeah.
Going to be.
So they have to take care of a lot of them have to take care of their entire families. And that's such an immense stress. So you see that happen in the NBA, because it happens in the NBA as well. But you look at it at the BAL, and it seems like the stakes can be a little bit higher for a lot of these players.
What's the potential for these players to be in the NBA? As far as you mentioned the beginning, you look at the athleticism, you look at the skills. I would say mental maturity, I think, is one you said.
So,
what would you say?
So as someone who is scouted, a lot of the people, it's an early league. So a lot of people I've watched the BAL, I don't think will ever have the opportunity to play in the NBA, just because of skill set and age and all these different things.
Right.
Now, the cool thing that the BAL does is that they bring players from the NBA academies to come play in the BAL as well. And I've seen some of those kids who I think will for sure go play D1. Yeah. And then from there, it's up to them to develop, work hard to go make it to the NBA. But you see the BAL, and a lot of the players, a lot of the best players are actually Americans who probably played in the G League. Yeah, that's where J. Cole. That's where J. Cole played. Yeah. So you'll see a lot of G League guys who go play there. Pros from other European leagues go play there. And the thing about scouting, it's all based on potential. So you're always going to want the younger guys. Yeah. And in the BAL, they want to win. The coaches want to win. The players want to win. So you play your older guys. So a 28-year-old who's playing in the BAL is not going to make it to the NBA.
Just the age. Maybe skill, but like the age is he's already there. That makes sense. And this is just to say, since the BAL is just starting, so who's to say in the future that can't be a transition from there to the NBA, right?
Yeah, and I would hope so. It's the first league.
Yeah. How long has it been around?
This will be the fourth year.
The fourth year, okay. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's very new.
Not even a decade for that to even...
Yeah, and it's the first time the NBA has done this outside of the U.S. It's the first league out of the U.S., combined with, I think they're partnered with FIBA.
Okay. Yeah, BAL, that sounds awesome, dude.
Yeah.
You should pat yourself on the back. You've done a lot of things. You should be proud of yourself, man. And then let's talk a little bit about Sideline. How'd the name come about?
Yeah.
I have my guesses. I'd like to see if I'm right. How'd the name come about? What do you want to do with it? Just give us everything.
Yeah. So the name came about based on a theory that I have, is that using real-time mental health and mental performance interventions can be very important for athletes.
Okay.
At the time I created the name 5 years ago, it wasn't really a thing for a mental performance person to be on the sidelines, right? Yeah. In soccer, it's a little bit difficult because they're so far away and you can only really talk to them at half. Right. But like in a sport like basketball or football, where there's downtime, there's timeouts, all these different things where you can go talk to an athlete. One of the questions I always ask my athletes is, how would I know that you're struggling mentally? How would I know, looking from the outside, that you're struggling mentally? The idea of like sideline psychology is that if I recognize those triggers or those signs that they are struggling, after the coach is talking, I might do like a quick hand sign. Hey, remember what we were working on? Remember, a lot of players, I'll tell them to write on their wrist tape, and they'll forget to look at their wrist tape, their affirmations that they wrote on there. So it's like, just look, and it's little quick interventions to bring your athlete back into the present, because they're like, oh, I just missed this shot. I'm going to lose it for my team. Yeah. Go look at what'd you write on your wrist before the game.
That is cool, man. Yeah. What do you want to do with Sideline?
Yeah. So it's my independent practice.
Okay.
I take on athletes and I help guide them to where they want to go. I just got a referral yesterday for a golfer. Oh. Yeah. So I've worked with golfers. I've worked with race car drivers. I've worked with basketball players, football players, soccer players.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's my space. That's actually, I provide services to BAL through Sidelines Psych. Yeah, so it's my practice to go have my own thing, get my full rate and everything in between.
That's awesome. I know we've talked about this at the barbershop. You know where I'm going with this? You need to do
Hockey player. If I knew anything about hockey, I would. It's not a sport that I grew up watching, but I definitely could see a need for it. But sometimes people come in and I can help a hockey player. I can help a hockey player on the mental performance stuff, but if you ask me to even say one hockey term, I wouldn't be able to speak their language.
So, I get it. Yeah.
So like at some point they're going to be like, oh, what is this guy going to be able to teach me? And I can teach them something, but I'm not going to be able to like use analogies in the way that I normally use them in other sports.
No, I get it. I'm just messing with you. Yeah. I just brought it up because I remember us talking about it and then talking about our baseball conversation.
Yeah. But who knows with the new hockey team?
Yeah,
right? Maybe
there's a really good chance, and so there's a good chance that Brian Smith, I think the owner of the Jazz, right,
and RSL,
RSL.
He's trying to bring all the sports teams. He's trying to bring all the sports teams here. He's really trying to turn this city into a tech sports city and get people out here.
And even thinking about it, Utah has, in my personal opinion, I think Utah has one of the best fan bases in all the sports. It's crazy. And everyone is sober going crazy, which makes it worse.
And they show up.
It
doesn't like
matter.
the Jazz. Like it doesn't really matter if they're bad or good. They're not that good right now.
Right.
But there's still a lot of people in there. There's still a lot of people in those stadiums. So it's a loyal fan base.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, dude, I think you'll have more business if hockey comes.
Yeah.
It's not hard to understand. And I really think a lot of it from the other sports that you've done will translate in some capacity, right? Not all of it, like basketball and golf, like maybe a little bit of it, but I think some of it would translate to what you've been doing. And it's just like hockey verbiage or whatever. I appreciate you coming. Yeah. It's been awesome to talk with you. Let's talk about being a father.
Yeah.
You've got one daughter.
Yes.
As I mentioned before, how old is she?
She's 5.
5.
Yeah.
Just figuring everything out.
Yeah.
The best age. What's it like being a dad?
It's the greatest thing I've ever done in my life. And it's not even close.
You're not done yet.
Yeah, we're not done yet.
Yeah. At all.
I worked in the NBA. I worked as a scout. I got a doctorate. I've done so many things. I've traveled the world. I've invested my money well and bought places, and none of it even compares to helping create and raise a child.
Yeah. So what's it? Because as a man, I feel like most men want a boy, right? I'm not saying that's your case, but like raising a girl, like I'm sure it's been different.
Yeah.
What would have been the joys and like things that like surprised you raising?
Yeah. I can actually start off with I wanted a girl.
Okay. I did too.
Yeah.
I did too. Yeah.
Yeah. When
I just feel like they're easier.
That was my exact thoughts. I was working at a after school program while I was in college, and man, those boys were just all over the place.
I remember one too. Yeah.
Yeah. And I originally wanted a boy, and then I was like working with all these kids, and I was just like, the girls are way easier. They're nicer and they're safer. I don't have to worry about them jumping off the kitchen counter and hitting their head. Like sometimes she can explore the world in an unsafe way, but it's way less than I think if you have a boy.
That's one thing that I've with my daughter. That's one thing. She's 9, and so like looking back when she's 5, like I consider 5 being the best age, dude. Like take advantage of just. Take it all in. Yeah. Because once that 7, 8, and 9 hit, they're just like my daughter right now. She's spit. Like I try and teach her things go in one ear, out the other. She's getting some of it. Yeah. But then like other rest, I don't know what she's gonna do with it. Yeah. Single father, right? Co-parent. Yeah. Tell me why. Because I asked this on the phone before, like co-parent. Yeah. And when I play it back, it's like, we're co-parents. Why do you take the single out of it?
Because I'm single, but I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it all by myself.
Yeah.
I have my daughter 1 week on, 1 week off.
Okay.
So to say, oh, I'm a single father it's like doing a disservice.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to me to say it that way, because if I was a single father, I'd be doing 100%. It's 50% of the time.
Here's one thing I appreciate. I'm going to read it to you. When I hear people talk about juggling or the sacrifices they make for their children, I look at them like they were crazy because the sacrifice infers that there was something better to do than being with your children. Being with my kid is the best, most fun thing. It's a privilege. It's not something I call a sacrifice. This is coming from you, dude. And I read it and I appreciated it so much. Yeah. I don't think there's a lot of men, and I could be wrong, but just they're so vulnerable in a way talking about their kids.
Yeah.
Like when I read that, I just loved it, dude. Like, you're a good dad.
Thank you.
And I can just tell that from a distance.
Thank you.
Even just that. And you said it, I've been trying to find words to like say the same thing, but like privilege is literally the best word to use when we have our kids, because it can be forever for when we're here on earth. Yeah. But like it's a privilege that we have literally every day. Yeah. And that we need to cherish those moments every time we have our kids. And being co-parents, not single dads, I got it. Yeah. Is that we don't have all the time, but the time we get is the privilege. Yeah. When we have them, dude. It's great. So I appreciate you posting that.
It's the term where guys like, oh, I'm babysitting my kid. I'm like, what?
What?
It's a weird term for me. And even I've seen moms and dads is like, oh, I sacrifice so much for my kids. What are you talking about? It's not something that computes for me when someone says that, because I was like, what better thing can I be doing? Yeah, I love working in Africa. I love working with athletes and all that kind of stuff. But if you gave me the choice and said, hey, and money didn't exist and you can just be a stay-at-home dad and play with your kid all day, that's what I'm picking. The most fun I have in my life is like when me and my daughter are going to play basketball, or when I take her to gymnastics, or we go to the water park. We always have something to do. Yeah. And now when you're 5 years old, that's a real cool age. That's a real cool age for having kids, because they can talk. They can start to formulate sentences and like real compound sentences and
real conversations.
Yeah. So we'll have. I've had 30-minute long conversations with my daughter where we're just discussing life, and I was like, these are better conversations that I've had with a lot of adults. So like, there's nothing better I could be doing with my time. Yeah, for real. Yeah, if I could, I wouldn't work, and I would just spend time with my daughter.
Dude, I'm right there with you, man. Yeah. And again, dude, you're a good dad.
Thank you.
Like, I can see that. Even when we were playing basketball, like I think it might have been over the summer. Yeah. Just when you brought your daughter, dude, like you were there before anyone. I showed up and you're just playing with your daughter in the gym. She was shooting. And dude, you're like just watching and seeing it, dude, you're patient and just, you're a teacher. Yeah. You know? So you're a dude.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thanks for joining us on Men Talk. We hope you enjoyed Dr. Johnson's take on sports psychology and mental performance. If you found value in this episode, like, share, and subscribe. Stay tuned for more inspiring discussions and keep striving to be your best self.